In this WrestleTalk news, a WWE talent is furious over Money in the Bank. More Nick Aldis and NWA in our reviews of Smackdown and Rampage.
Support WrestleTalk!
While Triple H has barely put a foot wrong since taking over the WWE reigns, this week's Raw saw that streak unquestionably end with Austin Theory's disastrous Money in the Bank cash-in attempt. Woohoo! That was a stinker. The creative decision left even Theory's co-workers perplexed, with fellow Raw star Elias speaking out on this week's edition of The Bump, calling the decision bizarre. But he's not the only one, with another prominent current WWE talent stating that the decision left him furious. Speaking on his After the Bell podcast, Corey Graves spoke on WWE's strange creative decision. "I'm furious with how it played out. I was furious as it was unfolding before our very eyes. I think the world of Austin Theory, and I truly believe what Mr. McMahon was saying 6 months ago, that this guy could be the guy." While Graves is undoubtedly upset over Theory's current direction, he also urged fans to let it play out on screen before passing judgment, saying it's only time to worry if Theory doesn't do something massive between now and Survivor Series. Another notable topic from Graves' most recent podcast was Braun Strowman, the monster with the very itchy Twitter fingers. Strowman has been receiving heat from outside WWE as well as within the company for his social media activity. However, not everyone has their pitchforks out just yet, with Graves coming to Strowman's defense. To everybody on the internet that's all up Braun's ass about Braun being proud of himself and him, in his opinion, declaring that was the greatest big man match of all time. Actually, Big John Studd and Andre the Giant. Look, that doesn't have to be your opinion. Braun delivered and Braun was feeling himself, and he got a whole bunch of people all up in arms about him saying, "I'm the best." You know what? That's what this game is now. This game's about self-promotion. Look, no one is mad at Braun for being proud of himself, Corey. People are upset. He then said that flippy floppy wrestlers suck and big men are better. Just slightly different there, pal. The Nick Aldis versus NWA Billy Corgan beef has been a regular fixture of the news this week, with the situation stemming from Aldis' comment to his Instagram that spoke of his intention to leave the promotion due in part to his relationship with President Billy Corgan. Speaking on Not Sam Wrestling, Aldis importantly revealed that he had in fact already given the NWA his 60-day notice prior to his social media comments, with the Instagram post, which he later deleted, intended to be just a bonus for his subscribers. "I gave my notice and I sort of alluded to why. It certainly wasn't intended to be this sort of, burial of the NWA or anything like that. Why would I do that? I would just be burying myself." I agree, Nick, I agree. Aldis noted that Corgan's creative decisions were a primary factor in him wanting to leave the NWA, calling the product embarrassing. Shots indeed fired. Aldis also questioned Corgan's recently saying his exit could be an angle, saying that just speaks to his level of understanding. So what does the future hold for Mr. Aldis post-January? Despite some well-documented heat between Aldis and WWE's Bruce Pritchard, Aldis spoke of his desire to face Drew McIntyre following Clash at the Castle, which actually sounds pretty fun to me. Nick Aldis to WWE confirmed? Maybe. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video to keep up to date with the latest news in wrestling world. Now, a hot tag to my LIW brother, Pete.
Thank you for being awesome pledge hammers on our Patreon page, Nathan the Street Racing Prophet Ford, and the British Bulldog Philip Boy J. Smith Jr. You can get your own shout out and loads of extra bonus content by visiting us at patreon.com/WrestleTalk. And now it's time for my review of Smackdown in about 5 minutes. This show began with a bang, and once again with a match, thumbs up, as we had New Day versus the Usos for not just the undisputed tag titles, but to see who would have the longest tag title reign of all time. This is a very easy match to get into, not just because there's two great teams, but because because the stakes are very simple. New Day have the longest tag title reign and they don't want the Usos breaking that record. Simple, easy storytelling. And this match was incredibly fun. Going through 2 ad breaks, the action started slow but really picked up towards the end with some incredible near falls that I legitimately bought as the finish, including the Usos hitting a double super kick followed by another double super kick and a double splash onto Xavier Woods, who kicked out. I thought for sure that was the end, but we kept going, building to a nice stare down between all 4 of them, and a great finishing spot of the Usos countering a Kofi Kingston crossbody into the 1D for the win. The Usos become the longest reigning tag team champions of all time, and honestly, good for them. They've deserved it. And from a storyline perspective, it's yet another reminder that the bloodline is good for people who join their ranks. You do actually join the Island of Relevancy, and you can become the longest reigning tag champs along the way. During the match, we saw Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, and Solo Sikoa backstage watching on. So instantly, of course, you think, where's Sami Zayn? Following the match, the Usos get congratulated by Reigns, who hugs them, tells them this is what greatness feels like, and says he needs to take care of business in the ring tonight, but needs them by his side for it. Roman needs to take care of business with the Usos, but without Sami Zayn? What does this mean? What does Roman have up his sleeve here? I can't wait to find out. We began the Smackdown World Cup next, with the winner of the cup receiving an Intercontinental Championship match against Gunther. I like this. Tournaments are good. They mentioned how they've got 8 wrestlers from all over the world for this. They've got people from Japan, Mexico, England, Canada, USA, and USA. Diverse. The first match in the tournament was Shinsuke Nakamura versus Santos Escobar. Isn't that convenient that they were feuding already? In quick succession on commentary, Michael Cole mentioned that Shinsuke Nakamura will be facing the Great Muta before Wade Barrett noted that Nakamura and Escobar had faced each other 15 years ago in CMLL. This truly is a different company now, isn't it? The pair put on a fine match. Legado del Fantasma got involved, and it led to Santos hitting a second rope phantom driver for the win, which was an unexpected but satisfying finish. I think it may have been good to truly establish Santos as a great singles talent with a clean win here, but this is still good. LA Knight was cutting a promo backstage before the TV behind him glitched out, and suddenly Bray Wyatt appeared, asking LA Knight how far he was willing to go in his violence. The recruitment drive continues, it seems, but LA Knight essentially rejected him, saying it's LA Knight's game, but then Wyatt headbutted him and walked off. I am quite curious about this Wyatt stuff, and I am still enjoying his interactions now they've moved across to other people and not just feuding with himself, I guess. But the vibe sure does feel off on this show. It feels like there was a different writing team, or changes had to be made last minute or something, because some of the content on this show just didn't quite feel right, and that's just a gut feeling. Up next was a 6-pack challenge to determine Ronda Rousey's #1 contender for Survivor Series, and Shotzi won. Alright, they've got 2 weeks to make me care about it. The match was perfectly serviceable, nothing special really. Unfortunately, the only really noteworthy thing in the match was a botch where Liv was seemingly supposed to dive from the barricade and put Raquel Rodriguez through a table, but she slipped or didn't dive far enough or something, so they both collapsed short of the table and hit the edge of it instead, which looked like a rough landing. Backstage, Emma congratulates Shotzi before asking if she'd seen Madcap Moss around anywhere. The two are of course dating in real life, so I thought this was a nice touch, until Shotzi said, "OMG, are you crushing? You're crushing, aren't you?" And if they're doing a romance story between Emma and Madcap, then I don't particularly care. Shayna Baszler then appeared after Emma walked off, and Shotzi told her that Ronda Rousey has never been in the ring with someone like her, which is a lie. She has. She's in fact beaten you in just over a minute in a beat the clock challenge, Shotzi. You are lying. Shayna choked out Shotzi, and the two will fight next week. I'm all for old Shayna being back, but I hope she doesn't become the wrestler people be on their way to Ronda Rousey. Ricochet is facing Mustafa Ali in the Smackdown World Cup next week, and that should be fun. Jinder Mahal made his return in the Smackdown World Cup to face Braun Strowman, yet he was somehow surprised he was his opponent, despite it being announced beforehand. Do you see what I mean by something feels off on this show? Braun won quickly, of course, and he's gonna win the World Cup and dethrone Gunther, isn't he? It was supposed to be Zelina Vega versus B-Fab next, but it was actually the return of the Viking Raiders, complete with Sarah Logan. They beat up everyone around ringside, and I am not against this presentation at all. I think they looked pretty great, all things considered. I'm a fan. And now it's the main event segment, the Bloodline doing a thing in the ring. It's my favorite. And on all the promotional graphics through the show, there was no Sami Zayn, so naturally, it makes you want to see him more. He was featured on the World Cup graphics as a reminder he still exists, which was a very nice subtle touch to make you want to see him even more. And Roman's business without Sami seems like a very intriguing segment. How will Sami factor into this? So Roman said, acknowledge me. Paul Heyman said the New Day suck and they're irrelevant now, which isn't how I would have booked this segment. And then it looked like Roman was going to acknowledge the Usos in a nice subversion of power dynamics we've come to expect. But then the Bloodline were interrupted by the Brawling Brutes, who said they're sick of the Bloodline having the numbers game every week, and then Sheamus came back, and then Drew McIntyre came out and they brawled, and that was the show. So no Sami? I have no idea what they were thinking here. This was a very poor payoff for a main event segment, and once again, I can't help but think there has to have been some last minute changes or something, because hot damn, Ridge Holland's promo absolutely stank of generic babyface promo from the 2010s. And the brawl was completely bog standard. There was nothing special, nothing to make it the Bloodline. And once again, there was no Sami Zayn. People love Sami. They want to see anything he does. And if he's not on the show, that's fine. Sometimes circumstances come up and plans have to change and all that. But you have to then tell your audience that they're not there, so they don't have the expectations of seeing them in the final segment. Especially when it's a 4-on-4 brawl, and Sami would have made the advantage for the Bloodline, which would have made perfect sense for him to be there. Just give us an explanation why he's not. This segment was a misfire in my opinion, and I just hope they can recover in time for War Games, which I'm sure will be a great match. But they didn't even announce that it's a War Games match with this lineup, which also would have made sense. There was just nothing to this segment. This show started really strong with New Day versus Usos, and while there was nothing terrible elsewhere on the show, there were lots of little bits that pulled me out of the show and just made me think, huh? Which is not something I should be thinking. Despite the banging opener, this show gets a 3 out of 5. Now hot tag to Tempest.
Hell yeah, good Rampage, let's f***ing go! I'm Tempest, your Jam That Champion, and this is my review of Rampage in about 3 minutes. We open our show with the face-to-face confrontation between Jungle Boy and Christian Cage with Luchasaurus. Most of the time, I'll greatly prefer starting a wrestling show with a match, but considering how rarely we get meaningful promo battles on Rampage, I'd consider this a win. Jungle Boy says these two have taken everything from him, and they continue to stack the odds against him, so at Full Gear, he's gonna take that away from them and stack the odds against himself. Not a great strategy, Cotton, but we'll see how it plays out for him, because he challenged Luchasaurus to a match inside a steel cage. Christian goads Jungle Boy into attacking him by talking about his mom and dad again, only for Luchasaurus to intervene and chokeslam young Jack on an open steel chair. Honestly, I thought this was an effective segment. Jungle Boy seems to be getting better at this promo thing, and although I'm kind of burnt out on this feud considering it has been going on for just so long, AEW's cage matches have delivered every time they've done them so far, and this is a big match for Jungle Boy to be the featured performer in. This has quickly become one of the matches I'm most looking forward to at Full Gear, and I'll give this promo duel a 4 out of 5. Death Triangle's backstage, and Pac says the reason Phoenix and Penta aren't singles champions right now is because they aren't willing to turn heel, was basically the message anyway. He says they have to defend the trios titles by any means necessary, so maybe a heel turn for this group is coming, which wouldn't be the worst thing. We need heel trios right now. We then had our first match as Brian Cage took on Dante Martin in a first round match in the Eliminator Tournament. Brian Cage is such a great base for the high-flying guys on the roster. He's a great powerhouse, but works the lucha style as well. It's just so nice to see him back in the mix. They did some great spots here. Cage caught Dante in a suplex position on a dive and suplexed him on the floor. Dante did his trademark leap to the top rope and jump to the outside, but ultimately, Cage won this match with the Weapon X, which is like a gory bomb mixed with a flatliner. Really fun match with stakes. This sort of thing is exactly what I want to see on Rampage more often. 4 out of 5. Lee Moriarty and Stokely Hathaway are backstage, and they say Lee's confidence is at an all-time high after his match with Jon Moxley, and he wants gold, and it doesn't matter who holds that gold. So I guess we're just forgetting about that promo where the firm said that Lee wants to be ROH Pure Champion, but whatever. Hook walked in and then walked out. We got another spooky House of Black vignette, this time focusing on Rebirth and such, and I just can't wait to see these guys on my screen again. They're all so incredibly great. Let Buddy Matthews wrestle on this show this time. We then had another match in the Eliminator Tournament as Roosh took on the officially signed Bandito. Roosh jumped Bandito before the bell with a dive and then whipped and choked him with an extension cord. Again, this is the exact type of match I'd love to see on Rampage, because you just don't get to see this sort of match on any other televised wrestling show. Bandito did a bunch of power spots, and as Jose the assistant tried to rip off Bandito's mask behind the ref's back, John Silver made the save, allowing Bandito to roll up Roosh and get the win. 4 out of 5. Jake Hager tries to get Claudio to consider becoming a sports entertainer again. Good luck with that. And then we got Nyla Rose versus Kayla Sparks, which went like a minute with Nyla hitting a pump kick and the Jaded for the win. Jade then came out and hit Nyla with a pump kick, but didn't get her belt back. Nothing wrong with this segment, it just was really, really short. 2 out of 5. Darius Martin, back on Dynamite with AR Fox against Death Triangle. God bless. Top Flight ready to fly again. Orange Cassidy continues my favorite running joke of stealing Mark Henry's catchphrase, and then he took on Lee Johnson for the All-Atlantic Championship in the main event. And I will give props when it's due. This show felt like it had its matches in the right order this week, which genuinely did increase my enjoyment of this show a lot. Thumbs up. Keep doing that, guys. This was a fun match. It's nice to see Lee Johnson get to do a little bit more after so long, and you had a lot of back and forth here between the Factory and the Best Friends. Danhausen got pile-driven on the steps and had to be taken backstage after Nick Comoroto threw Orange into the front row. Trent hit a big spear on Comoroto, which turned the tide in this match as Orange hit the beach break for the win. After the match, the Best Friends cleared out the Factory, and I wouldn't at all be surprised if QT Marshall versus Danhausen is a Full Gear buy-in match or something. This was a fun main event, even though it wasn't anything necessarily spectacular. It was definitely a good time. 3 out of 5. This Rampage was such an improvement over where the show has been lately in terms of pacing, the stakes of the matches, building to the next pay-per-view. This is exactly what I love to see. If Rampage keeps this level of content up going forward, this show will be just fine. This Rampage gets a 4 out of 5, but make sure to check out the WrestleTalk podcast today for all our thoughts on Rampage and Smackdown. Rest in peace, Kevin Conroy. Jam that jam.